You know, out in the Atlantic, there's this patch of ocean that's become a total graveyard for logic. It's a place where they say compasses spin like crazy and where whole ships and planes have just vanished. Today, we're diving deep into the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. Chilling, right? Those were the actual desperate last words heard from a pilot of Flight 19, a whole squadron of U.S. Navy bombers that disappeared back in 1945. It's probably the most famous story from the Triangle, and that frantic radio call, wow, it just perfectly sets the stage for one of the world's most stubborn mysteries. So where are we talking about exactly? Well, picture a huge chunk of the Atlantic, kind of connecting Bermuda, Miami, and Puerto Rico. On any map, it looks totally normal, just like any other part of the ocean. But its reputation, well, that's a whole other story. And let's be clear, this isn't some new age internet myth. The area has an infamous nickname, the Devil's Triangle. And that's because the strange stories go back way back. We're talking centuries. I mean, seriously, how far back? All the way to Christopher Columbus. On his very first voyage, he wrote in his logbook about his compass going haywire and seeing this bizarre ball of fire just crash into the sea. You could say these were the very first seeds of the legend we know today. So, how do you get from a few weird log entries to a global phenomenon? Well, it all comes down to a string of just baffling disappearances, incidents that seemed to completely defy any logical explanation. And the scale of these losses is just staggering. In 1918, you have the USS Cyclops, this enormous Navy ship with over 300 people on board. Just gone. No SOS, no wreckage, nothing. Then you've got Flight 19 in 45, 5 military bombers gone. And here's the real kicker. The rescue plane they sent to find them, that vanished too. These weren't just tiny boats. These were serious military machines with highly trained crews. So when you have mysteries like that with absolutely no wreckage, no bodies, no answers, people's imaginations just run wild. When you don't have logical explanations, you start reaching for the illogical ones. That huge void of information got filled with these terrifying ideas of being pulled into some great unknown. And this is where things get, well, pretty wild. The theories were all over the place. Was it alien abduction? A giant sea monster? Some people were convinced it was a gateway to another dimension, or maybe even leftover tech from the lost city of Atlantis. I mean, the theories were as deep and mysterious as the ocean itself. Okay, but after all the talk about sea monsters and portals to another dimension, it's time to bring it back down to earth and actually look at the facts. We really need to ask, does this legend hold up when you really scrutinize it? This is the big question, right? We've all heard the spooky stories, but what do the numbers say? Is the Devil's Triangle really some uniquely dangerous spot on the planet? Let's find out. And this statement is a pretty big deal. The U.S. Coast Guard, the very people in charge of safety in those waters, they've gone on record saying they don't even recognize the Bermuda Triangle as a place with any kind of special danger. That's a huge blow to the whole legend. The truth really comes down to simple math. Yeah, it seems like there are a lot of accidents there, but that's because the traffic volume is incredibly high. Think about it. More cars on a highway means more chances for a fender bender. It's the same here. Statistically, the accident rate is no higher than any other busy shipping lane. In fact, it's not even on the official list of the world's 10 most dangerous waters. So, if it's not Atlantis or aliens snatching planes out of the sky, then what is going on? Well, science has some really compelling and, frankly, much more believable explanations. All right, let's go back to that compass thing that Columbus and the Flight 19 pilots supposedly dealt with. The myth says they just spin wildly out of control. The reality? The Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where magnetic north and true geographic north actually line up. For a pilot or a sailor who isn't ready for that, it can be super confusing and throw them way off course, but it's a known, predictable scientific fact. And then you have the weather. This is wild. Scientists looking at satellite photos found these really strange, hexagonal-shaped clouds over the region. And it turns out, these clouds can create something called air bombs. Basically, these sudden, unbelievably powerful blasts of air shooting down with winds up to 175 miles an hour. That is absolutely enough force to flip a massive ship or knock a plane right out of the sky in seconds. And when you start putting all the pieces together, a much clearer picture emerges. You've got the Gulf Stream, this super fast ocean current that can sweep away any wreckage in just a few hours, which explains why they never find anything. The area is famous for sudden, violent hurricanes. And, of course, you can't discount simple human error, which investigators ultimately decided was the main reason for the Flight 19 disaster.
So, okay, we have all these logical explanations. Then why is the legend still so powerful? Why do we all know about it? The answer, it turns out, isn't at the bottom of the ocean. It's in how the story itself was built.
You can literally watch the myth-making machine get going in the middle of the 20th century. It starts with a newspaper article in 1950. Then, in 1964, a pulp magazine gives it that spooky, catchy name, but the real game changer was in 1974, when Charles Berlitz's book came out. It sold 20 million copies and turned this local mystery into a massive worldwide phenomenon.
And there's a really interesting psychological reason why this story stuck in our brains so well. It's called the frequency illusion. It's like when you decide to buy a red car and then suddenly you see red cars everywhere you look. Once the idea of the Bermuda Triangle was planted in our heads, every single accident in that huge area of ocean seemed like proof of the legend. And we just ignored the thousands and thousands of perfectly safe trips that happened every day.
So here's the bottom line. The tragedies, they were very, very real. Real people lost their lives. But the big, overarching supernatural mystery, that was manufactured. It was built by taking a bunch of unrelated accidents, stringing them together, and wrapping them up in a really compelling, sensational story. In the end, maybe the Bermuda Triangle is less about a physical place and more about us. It's a map of our own fears and our own curiosity. The scientific explanations are out there, but the legend just won't die. And maybe that's the real question we should be asking. Why are we so fascinated by a good mystery, sometimes even more than a simple, even if tragic, truth?